Hi guys, welcome back to NASA's Thread. So we're making this two-tone shirt dress. It's a mixture of Ankara and crepe. Okay, so if it's something you're interested in learning how to know, keep watching, give this video a thumbs up, bring out your fabrics, and let's get started. So we're working with an Ankara fabric and a crepe. So my Ankara is 1 yard, while the crepe is 1.5 yard. Okay, so depending on the length you want yours to stop and your size, you might be needing more. So I've gone ahead to fold my fabrics together, placing the right side of my crepe to the right side of my Ankara together. Okay, so you want to place them for the right side of your fabric to be facing each other, and after which go ahead and mark 2 inches for your button allowance. That's the button placket. Okay, so and then I'm rolling a line across at the top to serve as my starting line. On that line, I'm marking half of my shoulder measurement, which is 7.5. All right, that's simply what I did. And then I'll go down by 1 inch on that point for my shoulder slant. After which I'll go ahead and mark my shoulder length, sorry, my arm length. Okay, that's simply dividing your round bust by 6 inches and then adding 1.5 inch to that. Okay, so I just went ahead to mark it at the other end so that by the time I roll this out, I'm going to have a straight line. Okay, then I'll go ahead and roll a vertical line also to connect that point together so that they are all squared up, right? So you want to ensure you take your accurate measurements so that they are all correctly placed, right? So I hope you can see this properly. I'm working with a white chalk. My fabric is actually quite colorful, so I hope you can see this, all right? So I finished doing that, as you can see. We'll go over to our neckline. Now remember, the front will be open, like it has a button in front. So we'll be working with a neck width of 3 inches to a neck depth of 3 inches. Right, that is how we're going to do this. Another way to get this is simply dividing, like take the measurement of your round neck and dividing that by 5. Okay, mine is 15, so what I had was 3 inches, so I just took 3 inches on both sides, and then I'm going to use my curve rule to connect my neckline. Now note that we are only cutting the front. Firstly, this is the front. That is why it has a button allowance. All right, this is the front. Okay, the back was going to be all covered up, and I went ahead to connect my shoulder slant. I'm simply just marking the normal body measurements we have. Okay, so I'm taking half of the measurement I have here. I divided it by 2, the measurement I had around that area, and I'm going in by half of an inch. All right, then on the armhole line, that's the chest line, I'm going to mark quarter of my round bust. Okay, quarter of your round bust simply means dividing the circumference of your round bust by 4. So that's what I did, and I'm using my rule to join the points I have together. So you want to ensure you place your rule. You should use a curve rule at this point so that you get accurate measurements. All right, so I've done that. So I'll just go in with my chalk to touch up the lines so that it can be more visible. Okay, I'm sorry if you cannot see this clearly. All right, so I'm going to mark that off the back armhole later on, right? Then I'll go ahead and mark my bust point. So I'm placing this at the shoulder line, not at the area where I took my shoulder slant. Okay, so I marked my bust point. I marked my half length, that's from shoulder to waist. I marked my hip point from shoulder to hip, and the full length of the dress. Now whatever length you're using for your dress, you should have a hemming allowance, like, because you're going to fold this at the end. So except you're attaching something to the end of your shirt, your dress, because this is a shirt dress, okay? But we are not adding anything to this, so ensure you add allowance to the end for hemming it down. So I just went ahead with my rule to just make my lines across, right? So you can see this is what I have. So go ahead and take the circumference, our circumference measurement. So remember, I already took the measurement for my round bust on the chest line. So I'm going ahead to add 1 inch of ease allowance and then 1 inch for seam allowance. Now repeating the same measurement I have on the chest line on my bust point line. Now You can decide to add more than, all right, at a point. I felt I should have added, after making this dress, actually, I felt I should have added more allowance for ease. Okay. So ensure you add at least 1.5 to 2 inches to that. So I just took quarter of my body measurement from the bust to the waist to my hip circumference. Okay, added my stitching allowance, I added my ease allowance. Now on the hip, what I did, I took the same measurement I had on my hip, and then I marked it down on the full length of this. So it simply means the full length of your dress and your hip is going to have same measurement. And I'm going in with my curve rule to connect it. So you're going to see how this looks like after I finish connecting it. So we have our shape all out. Okay, see, you can see how nice this look like. This is what you should have. Okay, then I'll go ahead and cut it out. All right, so this is what we have. So for now, I'm going to leave the neckline firstly, and then we'll work on the back. Okay, so I want this to have like a little curve at the end. So I went up by 2 inches at the end, and then I'm using my curve to make a slant. That's my curve rule to make a slant line to the center front. Right, so I want, if you want yours to be straight, you can also use it like that. All right, but I wanted mine to have like a curve in front, so I went up by 2 inches at the side, and then I connected it with a curve rule to the center front, after which I'll go ahead and take it out because I'll not be needing that anymore. Like I said, if you want yours to be straight, you can go ahead and leave it like that. Okay, so for the back, I'm gonna head to fold my piece I'm using for the back. So I'm using just the plain crepe at the back, and I folded my button placket allowance at the front. I have, go ahead and trace out the shoulder with scissors. So just go ahead and trace out the shoulder you have on the scissors. So you just want to cut the straight down to the other edge of this. Okay, then after which I'm going to take my front piece down to have at least 2 inches difference between the front and the back at the top. So you notice I was measuring this out to ensure I had 2 inches. Okay, then I'll go ahead and pin this down, ensuring I have half of an inch extended out from the back piece. Okay, so the back, instead of it being on the same level, okay, both of them being on the same level, you have to extend the front piece out by half of an inch. This is for your overlapping allowance in front, so that by the time you finish stitching and adding your buttons, you won't have those holes that usually shows in front of the shirts. Okay, I don't know if you've ever had that experience. This is what this is for. This is what the half inch we are adding is for. It's so that by the time we finish, when we button down our shirts, we don't have any holes, or will I say any loopholes in front. Okay, everywhere should be closed by the time it is buttoned, except you decide to open up any of your buttons. So I'm just going ahead with my tape, measuring this out, extending the front by 0.5 inch. Remember, it is 0.5 inch. So I just went ahead to extend it out, and I'm pinning this down all through from the top to the down part of this. All right, so I finished. You can see the extension, that is half of an inch out there. All right, that is what we have. So let's go back to working on this, right? So we'll go ahead and trace out the other parts of our back piece. Okay, so for the back, I want to extend the back, that's the center front of the back, by 2 inches. So I went down by 2 inches at that end, and then I'm connecting it to meet this other end like so. Then I'll cut that out with scissors to have the shape I want at the back. So it simply means the back is extended by 2 inches at the center front. If you're extending your back, ensure it is at the center front and not by the side, because if you do this at the side, it simply means one will be longer than one and you will be lost. Okay, now at the armhole area, I was supposed to do this earlier. Okay, so remember the back piece, sorry, is not meant to be in as the front. So I just came out by 0.5 inch and then I cut it out. Okay, now for our neckline, this is a very delicate part you want to watch. Okay, so you can go ahead and pin this down so that you have this accurately. So I'm just tracing the same neck width I have for the front at the back, and I'll make a notch at that point firstly. Okay, I just made a notch there to identify that point. So it's the same neck width we have at the front, it's the same neck we are working with at the back. Okay, now for the depth of our neckline for the back, we're using 1 inch. Okay, so I'll use my rule first to rule a line like I'm doing. Okay, just rule a line, straight line. Okay, you can go ahead and make that a square if it works better for you. Then after which can use your curve rule to connect it. Okay, now the reason for this is so that if the back neck is too open, you have a very it will not be so fitted around the neck area. Remember, this has to fit your neck exactly. Okay, if the back neck is too wide, like I said earlier, the measurement around my neck is 15 inches. So that is what I should have when I'm cutting out my collar. It should not be more than that. I don't know if you understand. So if you don't cut this accurately, there's a possibility of your neck getting more than what it should be. So you should be very careful at that end. So I'm just going in to cut out the front piece. Remember, we've not cut out the neckline for the front piece. Okay, and I made a notch there to identify my button allowance. Okay, and I'll just take off my pins from this. Now the back has like a facing. Okay, the back has a facing, so I'll go ahead and cut out the facing of the back. I'm using my Ankara piece for the facing of the back. Okay, remember the back is all plain, so I want to use the Ankara piece for this facing at the back. Okay, then I'll go ahead and trace out the neckline from the back. I'll trace out the shoulder from the back, trace out the armhole area, just half of it, not all. Then what I'll do is to measure how long I want this to be. Okay, so for me, because I'm a girl, it shouldn't be too much. Okay, so I went ahead to measure 7 inches, right? Because I'll be folding in 1 inch later on. I'll be folding in 1 inch. I'm making this 6 inches later on. So I went ahead to measure 7 inches on both sides. So what I'll do is just cut it off at that point so that we have our facing. So this is what we have, right? So the first thing we are going to do is to work on the front. Now I just went ahead with my chalk to mark my back part so that I'm not confused. So you want to fold in, remember we left 2 inches in front, so you want to fold in 1 inch first and fold in another 1 inch in order to have the button placket. So go ahead and fold that in. You can decide to hem this first before stitching. Okay, or you can just go ahead and stitch this straight. Now remember, you're folding to the back and not to the right side of your material. You're folding to the wrong side of the material. Okay, so I've done that, and this is what we have after I finished. So I hope you can see this. This is what it looks like. It looks so nice. Okay, and this is also my other piece. This is what we have at the end of this. So ensure they are both matching accurately by the time you're through with this. So we want to stitch the shoulders together. Remember, I have a facing for this, right? So I'll also go in with my chalk to mark in my back piece. Remember, this is crepe, so it can be very confusing if you don't know the front from the back. Okay, so what I'm doing is placing my fabric, that's the back piece of my shirt and the front piece of my shirt. I'm placing them wrong side to wrong side. Okay, we are placing this wrong side to wrong side, so you have the right side of your fabric facing you, like facing up. Okay, and then you have the wrong side facing inside. So I hope you understand this. I'm trying to explain this properly so that you are not lost while you're doing this. So I just went ahead with my pins to pin them down. It simply means you're stitching the shoulders in front, not like inside like we usually do. So we're going to stitch this down by half of an inch on both sides of this. Okay. So that is what we're going to do. So ensure you place this properly, stitch this in the front, like stitch this at the front side. So I've stitched it down. Okay, this is what we have. So we have our facing. That is the reason why we're stitching in front. I hope you remember that. Okay, but before we attach our facing to this, like I said earlier, we'll go ahead and hem 1 inch. So I will use my hemming gum, place this down, and then fold up 1 inch, 1 inch, okay, and then hem it down. So this is what I have after I hemmed it down. You can see how nice this looks. Okay, so bring in our shirts now. That's our shirt dress, and then place it down. Ensure you're placing this properly. So because we stitched in front, okay, like we joined our shoulders in front, we're going to place this our our facing, the back facing, we are going to place the right side of the material of our facing to the right side of the front piece. Okay, and we'll go ahead and pin it down. So I just hope you understand what I am saying. Okay, if you don't, just pay close attention to what I am doing, and I am promise you you're going to get this correctly. So I just went in with my pins. I'm pinning this down so that it stays in place. Okay, just pin this down at the areas where they need to be pinned down. Okay, after which we'll go ahead and stitch it down with half of an inch on both sides of this. So I've stitched it down. This is what it looks like after stitching down. So by the time we flip this over to the back, you can see we have no stitched edge showing. Even from the inside, there's no stitch edge showing. Okay, so we've resolve the issue of having any stitch out. Okay, so we've turned this over to the back because this the facing is for the back. Okay, so it's meant to show on the right side of the fabric, it's not meant to be inside. So we're going to place this like this. So ensure before you place this, you've gone ahead to iron this properly so that it is smoothened, it doesn't move while you are doing all this. You need this to be smooth so that there's no part that's rough. All right, so we'll go ahead and place this down. So I'm just arranging this properly the way it should be. After which I'll go ahead and pin it. Now you're pinning only to the back piece. Okay, so only to the back piece. If you're pinning this all through, ensure you pin this only to the back piece, only to the back piece, like I said. But I'm going to pin this down so that it stays in place. And after which, after pinning down, I'll go ahead and stitch it together. Okay, so while working on this, I was still ensuring I had my piece properly placed. So you need to do that for yours. After which, you go ahead and stitch it down. Now you're stitching close to the edge of this, right? You're stitching very close to the edge of this so that there's no part going up. It needs to be all smoothing down. So when you finish pinning down, go ahead and run a stitch across. So I've stitched it down. Okay, so I've attached the back facing to the back part of my dress. This is what we have at the end of the day. Okay, I can promise you this dress is looking nice already. I feel like wearing it. So the next one to do is to cut out our bishop collar. So I'm drafting this out on my collar gum. So what I'm using is a collar gum. You can also use a gum stain to use this. So you need something that has like a little bit of thickness. So what I'll do now is to take the measurement of my back neck. So what I'll do is to fold this into two, then measure from the center front of my back neck to the part where I joined it to the shoulder of the front piece. I don't know if you understand. And then I'll mark it down. So what I had was 3 inches while it was folded. That means is 6 inches, because if I open this up, I have 6 inches. My collar gum is actually folded. Okay, then I'll take the measurement of the front piece. So remember what I had for the other one was 3 inches, and then what I had for the front part is 4.5 inches. Okay, so that means 4.5 inch times 2, that is like 9 plus 6. At the end of the day, I still have 15 inches, which is the circumference of my neck. So remember what I said earlier, ensure whatever you're doing, you also get that. So what I have at the end of the day was also the circumference of my neck. Okay. So from the back neckline, I'll go up by 1 inch. That's from the center front, because then I'll also go up by 1 inch. Then I'll connect both of them together like so. That is for my back. All right. I'll just square it up, and then I'll go ahead to mark inside. Okay, B. So I just wrote B to indicate that that is the back. Then at the front area, I'll go up by 1 inch firstly. Okay, and from the a part where I marked 1 inch, okay, I'll go up by 1 inch again. All right. So that is just simply what I do. So I'll connect my first 1 inch I went up for the front to the down part of the back. So just watch closely what I'm doing. So I'm just using my, then I'm going to connect the other one together like so. So you don't need this to be all straight, okay? So I just used a little curve to curve them together like that. So this is what I have. So on the other end, where I have my the measurement for my center front, okay, you can see what we have after measuring this down. So you ensure after doing this you have 1 inch in between, because it is 1 inch we are using for this. All right. So what I want to do next is that from the edge, that's this other end, I'll go in by one. I'm going in by 0.5 inch. All right. This is because we want a curve at that end. That end is not meant to be straight. Then I'll go in with my hand, with a free hand, and then curve it like so. Okay. So you can see what we have there at that end. It should not be straight so that it is not pointy. It should be curved at that end. So after which we'll go ahead and cut this out with a scissors. So this is what we have at the end of the day. Okay, so when we open this up, we have 15 inches as the length. You can see the down part of this is not straight. Okay, it is curved. So I've gone ahead to cut this out on the piece I'm using for my collar. I'm using the crepe part of my collar. Okay, so this is just a mix of the fabrics I'm working with, right? So I went ahead to cut this out on the fabric I want to use as my collar, and I cut out two pieces of this, ensuring I have half of an inch around this. Okay, so I have half of an inch around this, and I'm just going ahead with my pin to pin it down so that it stays in place at the middle. Okay, so I'll go ahead and iron this to it, after which I'm going to stitch this down. Okay, so you're stitching from the side to the top part and then to the other edge, leaving the down part of it open. So ensure you mark your down part to be sure of it. So I've done that. This is what I have after I finished, and I've also ironed it down. Okay, so I want to get the midpoint of my collar. I folded this into two, made a notch at the midpoint, okay, to indicate that part. And I'll do the same thing to the shirt part. Okay, that's the shirt, the neckline of the shirt. So I'll go in, I'll fold this into two, get the midpoint of that end also, after which I will make a notch to indicate that point. So I've made that. So what I'm doing is pinning this down, midpoint to midpoint. So ensure you pin this down, the notch part of the shirt to the notch part of your collar. Just pin this all around this. So I'm just going to pin this all around so that while I'm stitching this down, I don't experience any troubles whatsoever. So I just went ahead to pin this down round. and then I'll go on later to stitch it. So you have to pin this down so that you're not it's not moving about while you're working on this piece. So the reason for the half inch we joined around this is so that we can use one to stitch the first part down and then use the other end to close it down. So that's what I'll do. After stitching with half of an inch, I'll flip this over and then fold in half of an inch inside and then stitch it also. So I've done it. This is what we have. You can see the outside of this and you can see the inside looking nice. So you want to use a matching thread, okay? So I've gone ahead to cut out the sleeve for this dress. Okay, the video was getting quite long and I didn't want it to be too long. So I went ahead to cut out my sleeve. I want to attach my sleeve to the dress, okay? So if you don't know how to cut out a basic sleeve, this is just a basic sleeve. I'm going to drop a link in the description box so that you can get a video of how to draft out a basic sleeve. Okay, so I'm just pinning the center front of my sleeve to the shoulder point of my dress. Okay, that's where I did my joining, and I'm going to pin this all around this so that they are all placed properly. And after doing that, I'll go ahead and repeat the same thing for the other one. The other one I have, that's the other part of my sleeve. I'll go ahead and repeat the same thing to the other part of my sleeve, before which I'll go ahead and stitch it down on both sides, ensuring I attach my sleeves to the proper parts. So my sleeve has like the mixed, like you remember we're doing this mix, so my sleeve has like a mixed, one part is black with the ankara at the end, while the other part is the ankara with the black at the end. So that's just what I did. So I'll go ahead and stitch it down. Doing that, finish attaching my sleeves. This is what I have after I did that. This is the inside of my sleeve. This is what it looks like. Okay, so for the finishing touch of this, for this video, we'll go ahead and stitch down the sides. All right, so I'm going to stitch down my sides by half of an inch. Remember I added 1 inch for stitching allowance and then 1 inch for ease, so I'm using half inch instead. Okay, so I've done that, stitched the sides. I went ahead to hem it. Okay, so the remaining thing for this is to fix our button. So I don't know how to do that. I'll be going out later to fix that. Okay, so ensure you give this video a thumbs up if you are still watching to this end, and if you're yet to subscribe to the channel, please subscribe. Let me know of your thoughts on making a 2-part shirt dress. All right, so remember to like this video and I will see you in the next. Bye.